Well, Shohei Ohtani is a Dodger, huh? Welcome to Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner. I know that this is a Twins podcast, but man, we got to talk about Shohei Ohtani for a second because this is unprecedented, obviously. And we knew it was going to be unprecedented with Shohei Ohtani and his free agency decision. And we knew it was going to impact Major League Baseball. And honestly, I thought it would kind of dictate when the offseason was really going to begin. There's a couple other moves that happened, and we'll break down those and why it relates to the Twins in a second. But let's just take a moment to talk about Shohei Ohtani becoming a Dodger. I mean, first of all, this is, I just messaged somebody on Twitter a few minutes ago, and I just said top one least surprising outcome of all time, that Shohei Ohtani is going to be a Los Angeles Dodger. Everybody kind of saw it, not saw it coming, but everybody kind of knew, right? Like Shohei Ohtani's from Japan. Probably the West Coast made more sense in terms of the flights, going back and forth travel. It's just easier to be on that West Coast. New York would have just been a nightmare logistically. It's on the literal opposite end of the world. There's a story in The Athletic about all the reporters from Japan who cover Ohtani, like they were going to have to move and relocate. And there's a fiasco with John Morosi reporting that there was a plane on its way to Toronto, and turns out it was just some random business guy. Oh man, what a disappointed tarmac. There's just a bunch of guys in what, I don't know, what's the jersey of choice? Jose Bautista jerseys, Paul Molitor jerseys. Does somebody already have Shohei Ohtani jerseys drawn up in Toronto for that to happen? But it turns out just to be some business guys like, why is everybody mad at me? I just got off my flight. Anyway, this is big. This is a big news. Not only is Shohei Ohtani getting 10 years, no opt-outs in the contract whatsoever, but according to everybody, and Jeff Passan, the first one on it that I saw on Twitter, $700 million on an AAV, just doing the quick Bertha Hewitt High School math. $700 million, 10 years, $70 million a year, man. That's so much. So much. But according to Jeff Passan, according to Ken Rosenthal, according to some other reporters on this situation, it is going to be very deferred, extremely deferred. According to Jeff Passan's Twitter, Shohei Ohtani's contract has significant deferrals that include most of his salary. An idea, a source said, that was Ohtani's. In deferring the money, it reduced the cost of the competitive balance tax hit and will allow the Dodgers to build a better team around him. So not only is this guy going to get paid, I mean, in 2057, we're going to have Shohei Ohtani Day as he gets paid $20 million a year or something insane like that. It's going to have massive deferred payments for Shohei Ohtani, and it's going to allow the Dodgers to be able to creep under that luxury tax or give them a little bit more flexibility to do that. And man, Mookie Betts at second base, Shohei Ohtani probably being your DH, but can play some outfield. Maybe Shohei Ohtani does become the right fielder in Los Angeles. I haven't done a deep dive at the roster, so I'm not sure how things shake out, but Mookie Betts at second. You have Freddie Freeman at first. You just, the Dodgers have just been so good for so long. It's almost like they took the most analytically minded guy in the league who ran the Rays and then gave him the payroll that's the second biggest in baseball. And you just see the machine right now that is the Los Angeles Dodgers organization. And man, it's always been the Dodgers mantra to just have the best team on paper and to kind of choke away. And in baseball, it's so much harder to build a super team because of reasons X, Y, and Z. I mean, look at the Angels. They had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, two, possibly 1 and 2 of the best baseball players of all time. And they couldn't even get a winning record, which goes to show you how much you need to have a good infrastructure around your organization. And the Dodgers have a much better infrastructure. And Shohei Ohtani, I mean, yeah, I know that they're on different parts of LA, because technically the Angels are in Anaheim, and, it's a little bit different than where Chavez Ravine is. I get all that, but wow, that guy doesn't have to move. He doesn't have to change cities. The reporters in that area don't have to move. Really, he still gets to be in that Southern California area. He still gets to live there. And man, if you're the Toronto Blue Jays, I am sorry. You lost out on Shohei Ohtani. You did not get Juan Soto. We'll get to that in a second. And you also lost to the Twins and now own the longest consecutive playoff game losing streak in baseball. So just a rough 2 months for the Toronto Blue Jays organization. I'm sorry. I generally like the Blue Jays. I don't know why I'm being so mean, but that sucks for them. But man, it's huge. And with that contract, it's going to shape Juan Soto because he's going to be a free agent next year. There is no way. I know he just got traded to the Yankees. And I know that obviously if, old man Steinbrenner were running the team, he already would have been signed to an equally or, on par with Soto giant contract, and he'd be a Yankee for life. But we'll see what that happens. If I'm Juan Soto, I'm hitting free agency. And obviously nobody is going to top what Shohei Ohtani does. The reason is, the standard rate for a big contract, Carlos Correa was going to get paid $375 million. And that would have been one of the biggest contracts in Major League Baseball history. This is set, and that was over 13 years. This is over 10 years. $700 million. Because, of course, Ohtani, when he's on top of his game, is one of the best pitchers in baseball and is currently one of the best hitters in baseball. Now, of course, he does need Tommy John surgery, or that elbow requires some kind of repair on that. And as we learned as Twins fans with Austin Martin, you can play throughout the season as a hitter while still needing to repair your UCL. Austin Martin did that for the Twins over the course of the 2023 season, Ohtani can spend all offseason rehabbing and getting ready. And I mean, it's huge. It's huge. So basically that's why Ohtani's getting the money he is because he's a pitcher and a hitter, and he would get $350 million for being the best in the world at either one. And so you put it together value wise. And even though it's a lot of money, if you get Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, and Shohei Ohtani, the hitter, he's worth every cent, especially when you put him on a team like the Dodgers that has the infrastructure that they do to win. Now, win in October, we'll find out. But first, we actually have to get Shohei Ohtani into the playoffs, which, again, this whole thing has just been so crazy for Shohei Ohtani and for baseball. And now is kind of where we start to move into Twins territory and how this affects the Minnesota Twins, because obviously the Twins aren't going to sign a free agent, really, unless Polanco and Kepler are traded and there's no equal salary that they're getting back in those deals. So unless that's happening, here's how this impacts the Twins. Because now things can start to move. Now we know that the Dodgers got Ohtani. We know, the dominoes kind of need to fall. And if you're somebody who's upset that the Twins haven't done anything yet, while Sonny Gray is gone. I mean, that's the title of the podcast episode before I saw the Ohtani signing. Gray's gone. Kenta Maeda's gone. Emilio Pagan is gone. Now, there's varying degrees of how much the Twins will miss each pitcher, but they're going to have to make up for them. They're major league players, and especially in the bullpen, the Twins are going to need to figure that out. And, if you're the Twins, you currently have 5 guys in Jorge Lopez, Pablo Lopez. Jorge Lopez, by the way, signed a deal with the Mets, $2 million. Hope he does well. If you look at Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, Chris Paddock, Louis Varland, you have 5 pitchers currently. There's nobody underneath them. So you want to sign 1, maybe even 2 pitchers to essentially give yourself a little bit of depth. As the Twins learned, they had 5 major league guys. Ober and Varland started the year in AAA, and they were needed for chunks of the season because that's how things kind of shift in a Major League Baseball season. And they still needed Dallas Keuchel to help them with a few games. So you're going to need a few guys and maybe a minor league signing or 2 to help kind of shore up that rotational depth. And maybe a trade does it. Maybe a free agency signing does it. For all of those who are worried about the Twins, things are going to happen. They're typically a front office that moves slow. And they're typically a front office that wants to react to how the market is shifting in terms of baseball. They're a read and react. They're not ones that are going to, there's the guy that says, I don't care what happens. I'm going to let the market, I'm going to be the one dictating the market. I'm going to be the one who's going to go out and make a deal. And we need to get this done. I want to be the one, trailblazing. And the Twins are like, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to see what you did. And I'm going to figure out how to do it differently, or how to do it, better would be the ideal term. But for the Twins, they've always been since their first I know their first offseason was a little different because they signed Jason Castro and they had some kind of minor, transactions. But in 2018, the Twins signed a bunch of guys into spring training. When you talk about Lance Lynn, Logan Morrison, there's a couple others that come to mind. The Twins are typically a team that likes to be kind of the last dog at the bowl. They want to be the ones that kind of wait and see. And it's not to pick up the scraps. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's more of we're going to let things happen and we're going to let some prices get set and we're going to wait for some teams to kind of get desperate. And then we're going to make a move. And this is where Ohtani and Juan Soto make a big deal, because Ohtani being off the board just means that, okay, well, the big fish is off. We kind of know who's going to spend the money. We know where that's going. Done. Everybody was just waiting for Shohei Ohtani to get signed. All the other free agents were waiting for Shohei Ohtani to get signed, pretty much, outside of like Sonny Gray and Kenta and all that, for different reasons we'll get to in a second. But Juan Soto getting traded to the Yankees is possibly the biggest one. And Juan Soto just kind of clears it up so everybody's focus is off where Ohtani is going. And now, with Juan Soto being traded from the Padres to the Yankees, this means that some teams that were hoping to get that corner outfielder in Juan Soto, now they can get a corner outfielder in Max Kepler. Some teams that, were looking for an extra bat, there's Jorge Polanco for you. There's some stuff. Now, which guy has more trade value? Which guy I would trade if I'm the Twins? I wrote a piece in this for Zone Coverage a while back. I would say that Polanco's the guy to get traded, where a year ago Kepler made the most sense rather than Polanco if you were going to trade either one. And the reason why Kepler made more sense at the time is the Twins a year ago felt like they had a lot more outfield prospects that were major league ready. When you talk about Trevor Larnach and Matt Wallner and Alex Kirilloff, and they signed Joey Gallo. Well, Joey Gallo's gone. Trevor Larnach still needs some time to cook, but isn't ready to hand the keys to. Maybe last year you're willing to do it. He's a guy that, not saying you need to give up on Larnach, but you're certainly not going to just pencil him in as your opening day right fielder if you get rid of Kepler. And Matt Wallner emerged as the left fielder, and Kirilloff kind of moved into the infield. He's pretty much going to be thought of for now until his shoulder gets right as a first baseman. So Max Kepler kind of by default has just walked into that. So it's Kepler or Larnach. If you get rid of Kepler, you have to hand the keys over to Larnach or get somebody else in. And are you quite ready to do that? I'm sure there's a guy I'm missing or a prospect or two, but all the Twins' glut of prospects are in the infield. That's where it's at. It's in the infield with Royce Lewis and Brooks Lee and Ed Julian and Jose Miranda. And, they go down the line. Carlos Correa takes up shortstop. You still have Kyle Farmer in the mix, although, most people believe that he's going to be traded at some point because the $6 million, $6.5 million for a utility infielder is just a little too rich for the Twins, who did cut their payroll. Of course, that was announced over about a month ago, maybe a little less, that they were going to switch and because of the Bally thing. And we'll get to the Bally stuff in a second and all that when we talk about the Twins TV announcers. A lot's happened since we last talked, so we're trying to catch up on everything here. But out of the guys that I would trade Polanco because there's just a lot more infield depth. Polanco's another year older. He's an underrated Twin. He's great. This isn't to say Polanco is a bad baseball player. I love Jorge Polanco, and the moment the Twins trade him, because it probably is going to happen, it could happen with Kepler too. I think the Twins should prioritize trading Polanco over Kepler at this point. And it's not because, I've been pretty hard on Max Kepler. It's not because I love Max Kepler or think that, all the haters were wrong. And it's just to say, like, right now, in terms of where the Twins are at with their franchise, Max Kepler is more of a guy that they need to hold on to than Jorge Polanco. Ed Julian can just be the second baseman. If you feel like Ed Julian's not doing a good enough job, you have Brooks Lee at some point who's going to take over. You can move Royce Lewis over to second base. Jose Miranda can play first base. You can move Ed Julian to first base and have Brooks Lee play second. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces with that infield. And that's what the Twins like, as we learned last year. They want that positional flexibility. They want to be able to kind of shuffle guys around and see what happens. And they don't want to just pigeonhole guys into spots. But also, Polanco is making over $10 million. He still has an option for next year, whereas Max Kepler's an impending free agent, so you can get just a little bit more value for that. The one knock on Polanco, which won't help his trade value, but for the Twins' standpoint, is the guy's health is just, he's above 30. His health, he was an Iron Man for a long time. And now he's just starting to get he's starting to get banged up a little bit more. The bumps and bruises are just kind of popping up. more and more, not a ton, but just steadily. And they kind of mount a little bit when you miss time here and you miss time there and you miss time here and there. And it's not his fault. It's just part of getting older. And especially when he's a guy who played through a lot of stuff early in his career, he's sort of having to buy that back a little bit now. But again, I love Jorge Polanco, and he's one of my favorite Twins, and he comes up with some big moments. He had a playoff home run. He's good, and I don't want the Twins to get rid of him. That being said, based on where the payroll is at, based on where the franchise is at with their prospects, even if the Twins' payroll was in a good spot, I still think they probably trade Jorge Polanco just based on where they're at and where all their prospects are. At Julian emerged to kind of, he's not a great second baseman, but he can at least hold down the fort, and he got better on his defense. And so that's where I think things stand that way. But, how much are they going to get in return? I hope something meaningful. Now, whether you got to package those two guys together, whether you have to put a prospect in, which could happen as well, you're not going to get a Pablo Lopez back for them straight up like the Twins did with the Luis Arraez, because Luis Arraez is younger, had cheap team control, and was coming off of he was the literal batting champion. So those are reasons why you're not going to get a Pablo Lopez type straight up. You maybe have to include a B-list prospect. Maybe you have to include a couple C-listers. Maybe you have to agree to pay for some salary. I don't know why the Twins would do that, but you could. There's some things that you're going to have to work out. But also the Twins, it has to be worth their while, because I could also see a scenario in which the Twins just keep Polanco and Kepler on their roster. Now, I'm basing that off of nothing, but just on a gut level, I could also just see the Twins going, you know what? Let's roll with it. These are veterans. We're in a win now mode, and we'll kind of roll with our guys. We'll get we'll add we'll get rid of a guy here, and we'll trade a guy here or there for maybe a mid-level starter, back-end starter, and wait till the trade deadline. And then if we're in position, then we'll kind of start to trade from the pool a little bit. But also, I feel like the Twins are going to make a move in the offseason to do it. Now, Bobby Nightingale of the Star Tribune was reporting that there is some interest in Kepler and Polanco. Based on the way it made it sound, is that it didn't seem like anything was imminent or like things are heating up. It's just kind of, especially after the Soto trade, there's some now things that are going to kick up a little bit, and some things that are going to manifest now that the big dominoes have fallen off the board. Now is the time for Falvey, that the market has been set for Soto. And, if Juan Soto's worth this much, okay, well, how much? Max Kepler obviously is nowhere near that stratosphere, but how much can we get for Max Kepler based off of Juan Soto? Now that the market is kind of setting itself, the Twins are going to react and try and get the deal they can. And they've been stingy because they could have traded Kepler last year. And by the way it made it sound, is it would have been just kind of for spare parts or just to get something for him. And the Twins felt like he was worth more than that. And in the second half, they were proven right. But does another team believe that? Because the Twins value Kepler very highly. Obviously, if you look by the fact that they didn't dump him, by the fact that he had a bad first half and they still stuck with him every day, the Twins really like Max Kepler. So I don't see a situation where they just trade him for nothing. And if they're going to, I think Polanco might be that guy. Now, if it's the only guy to get a top end starting pitcher, maybe not number one, but maybe a high end 3, high end 2 starting pitcher, then yeah, it might cost something. But anyway, back to the Twins starting pitching. So let's take a second to talk about Sonny Gray. He left, signed a 3-year, $75 million deal with the Cardinals. Props to Sonny Gray. Awesome. Glad he got his money. First time being a free agent. St. Louis is a good city for him. They needed starting pitching badly. He's going to be their ace. That being said, I know there's a lot of Twins fans that are upset that Sonny Gray isn't back. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Sonny Gray is a guy who had a career year. And they call them career years for a reason, because you typically don't do them very often. It was Sonny Gray's best season since 2019. And 2019 already was 4 years ago. And I know there's a COVID season, a couple other things. The lockout messed up last year. But, overall, the Twins, it's been repeated a billion times, but I'll repeat it one more time. Sonny Gray was traded for the Twins' 2019 first-round pick, Chase Petty. And when Chase Petty goes to the Reds, the Twins get Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray pitches a above average, good season for the Twins a year ago. ERA was like 3.5. Didn't pitch a ton of innings, but was effective when he was there. Battled some injuries as well. And the lockout kind of messed up that in his preparation. And he got traded like 3 weeks before the season started. So there was a whole lot of weird kind of things that went into that. But still a good season overall. One that if he did it last year, I don't think anybody would really be complaining about the Sonny Gray trade either. But Sonny Gray was runner-up for the Cy Young and had an ERA of 2.5 and was somebody who only gave up like 3 home runs all season long, and a guy who just was one of the, I mean, not Pablo Lopez up there in strikeouts, but was a guy who's effective, even though his innings, he pitched the most innings he's pitched in years, but still felt like, the fan base felt like he was getting gypped or something like that. Anyway, Sonny Gray was a guy who had a career year, and that's awesome. And I'm glad he did it in a contract year and everything worked out for him. And that's great. But also, he's not going to do it again. And that's not to say that I don't want Sonny Gray to do it again. I want Sonny Gray to be successful. I don't care. But it's the thing of he wasn't going to pitch the exact same level of productivity for the Twins. Now, maybe you're a Twins fan who says, yeah, I know. I want him, even if he pitches like he did in 2022, I'll still be okay with it. In which I'll say, yeah, you're right. But even if the Twins weren't cutting payroll, would paying Sonny Gray, now the contract with the Cardinals is a little bit different because it's like $35 million this year, $25 million next year, $10 million last year. Like, it's a very weird, or it's the other way around or something like that. I believe that they're front loading the money for Sonny Gray, and I wouldn't do that contract. And there's a reason why he signed it with the Cardinals and why he signed so early. He got 3 years and he gets a big payday, and the Cardinals were willing to give it to him. It's kind of the reason why Kenta Maeda went to the Tigers. A lot of teams had 1-year deals, and the Tigers gave him a 2-year deal. And according to Aaron Gleeman of The Athletic and on the Gleeman and the Geek podcast, he made it sound like the Twins were in on Gray on a 1-year deal to come back. And the Tigers were like, okay, we'll throw in an extra year, and we want you to play for us. We're going to throw in that extra year. And Kenta Maeda's like, cool, I get 2 years of pay instead of 1, and I can get the peace of mind knowing that I'm going to be on a team for 2 years in a row, and it kind of can build that up a little bit. That's good for Kenta. I'm going to miss Kenta. I really am going to miss King Kenta. It's not going to be fun to see him or Sonny Gray go, but both of them are not irreplaceable. Sonny Gray's in his mid-30s. Kenta Maeda's in his mid-30s. They're guys that the Twins are going to have to live without. And if you're a team that wants to build a pitching pipeline like the Twins are trying to build, you got to be okay with letting some of those guys walk and trusting that you can put some younger guys in the spot to succeed. Now, as we talked with Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, Chris Paddock, and Louis Varland, all 5 of those guys are feather in the caps for the Twins' development of Pablo Lopez, taking him up to a true ace level. Ober, Varland, Paddock, and Ryan, all just kind of guys the Twins have just kind of squeezed a little bit more out of in terms of their production. They're still going to need to put more pitchers in there, and they're going to need to replace them. I'm not saying that they just need to roll out with those 5. Even if they're all great, the odds of none of them getting injured or the odds of none of them, falling off at some point in the season, you still need to have that depth. And, heck, the idea has been thrown around of moving Louis Varland to the bullpen in that situation. Can you move Varland to the bullpen if you have 5 starting pitchers and Varland could be a super weapon? I think that'd be great, but I think Varland maybe is probably got to cook another year as a starter before I'm ready to move Varland over to the bullpen just yet, because I think the Twins need another year with him. I also think, can't you just do the Kenta Maeda route with Louis Varland, where you have him be your starter all year long, and maybe that last month of the season, if you're in playoff contention, you groom him for that bullpen role. Now, maybe the Twins do that just because they're strapped for cash, self-imposed, by the way. They're strapped for cash, and they just say, well, we just need Varland to be the starter, or excuse me, we just need Varland to go to the bullpen because we don't have any money, or we don't want to. We need to address the bullpen, but we don't have any ways to do it. We don't have enough resources to do it. So here, let's instead invest in the starting pitching and kick Varland to the bullpen full year. I could see that. I also feel like he needs more time to cook as a starter, but I know the Twins are probably very intrigued, as we all are, with what Louis Varland could do in a, reliever-like role. But right now, the Twins have the infrastructure to develop some pitching, and they have to kind of rely on that. Now, maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe Sonny Gray is runner-up for the Cy Young again and pitches a 2.5 ERA and throws 9 innings a game like some Twins fans think he deserved to do every single night. I don't know. But the Twins are going to have to move on from Sonny Gray and Kenta. And it's going to sting because those 2 guys meant a lot to this team during their, I'm going to put unique for both of them. Of course, with Sonny Gray coming in the post-lockout and kind of where he's been, and Kenta for coming in 2020 and the COVID year and being a runner-up for the Cy Young in 2020, the Tommy John surgery coming back, and all of that. They both had unique tenures as Twins, but very memorable. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to look back on some of those things that they were able to do. But Sonny Gray overall, I wrote about this in Zone Coverage about what he meant to this organization and just what he meant for build. Like the reason that Sonny Gray was here was to get the Twins into this position. And maybe it wasn't thought of right at the time, but the Twins are going to get their value. Because again, as we mentioned, they got 2 years of Sonny Gray, which alone for trading Chase Penny are good. And as it's been widely reported on, the Twins get a low first round, or like a low first round pick. Like you're drafting later, it's like mid 30s, I think like 34, 35, 32, somewhere in there. The Twins are going to get a compensatory pick. They're going to get a compensation pick back because the Twins extended Sonny Gray a qualifying offer. He turned it down. Since Sonny Gray turned it down, the Twins got some value back. Now the qualifying offer is like Major League Baseball's franchise tag. And what it does is it tries to help smaller market teams who have free agents leave and give them kind of some form of compensation back for a big name player leaving because they just don't have the means to re-sign them, or don't want to, by the way. And the qualifying offer has been used by a whole bunch of teams. So anyway, Sonny Gray got the qualifying offer, turned it down, signed a deal over $50 million, which is why the Twins get essentially a late first round pick back, kind of almost wiping out the late first round pick that they got for Chase Petty. Now the Twins are going to have to hit on that draft pick, but at the end of the day, the trade alone, the Twins got their money's worth. But what I always equate that deal is that the Sonny Gray trade was a great deal with an even better rebate. So the Twins are going to be able to get some value back for that. Now that won't manifest itself this season, which I know most Twins fans don't really want to talk about right now. And I get it. I don't blame you, but as a long-term roster building standpoint, that's where the Twins sit. But Sonny Gray coming into this franchise and what he's done for this team, grooming guys like Joe Ryan and Bailey Over, but specifically Joe Ryan. I mean, Joe Ryan talked all the time about picking Sonny's brain and doing a whole bunch of stuff. And there's a really fun conversation with Sonny Gray talking about Joe Ryan's complete game shutout. And he was sitting in the dugout with Pablo Lopez during the game. And, they're like, well, they just sat there all game because it was like, very superstitious. Like, we don't want to move because Joe's dealing and we've been here all game. We don't want to get up and move and get him off his rhythm. And Pablo Lopez and him were talking about pitching all game. And the one thing Pablo Lopez asked Sonny Gray was, what's it like to pitch in the ninth inning? I've never done that in my career. And Sonny Gray's like, you never pitched in the ninth inning? He's like, I don't know, man. It's just like every other inning, which, is not that big of revelation, but you could tell, like, talking about it, and those guys cared about each other, and the way that, and Sonny Gray didn't do everything. I'm not trying to say that he's responsible for every single good thing that's happened for the Twins, because most of that goes to the organization and the coaching staff for kind of building up the infrastructure, coaching the guys up, doing all that. But Sonny Gray meant a lot as a leader to that team as the veteran. Even though Lopez, I think, was the best pitcher for the Twins last year, Sonny Gray was the leader in that room. He was the leader last year, coming in his first year. He's the veteran, has the respect of everybody, good guy. And he told Pablo Lopez that. And like 2 weeks later, Pablo Lopez threw his own complete game shutout against Kansas City. And he got to have that moment. And, Sonny Gray remembers that. And there was a pregame interview that he did with Bally back in September talking about it. And, that was important. The pickoff play that they got in the postseason against Toronto. Sorry, Blue Jays fans, you're getting ripped in my podcast today. Is that pickoff against Toronto? Sonny Gray was talking about, we've been practicing that since spring training. And what that does is it shows, maybe Twins players already knew this, but it's just kind of that reminder for guys of, for moments that matter in October, you need to be working on that in spring training. There's just things that Sonny Gray was able to do clubhouse wise and on the field that set things up, because Sonny Gray came in, he regripped, some pitches. He added a splitter to his mix. He listened to the Twins coaching, and the Twins were able to get him a 3-year, $75 million contract in his mid-30s. The Twins were able to give him another payday. And that's important to people. And some pitchers, even the ones that the Twins have brought in, aren't always very receptive to the things that you want him to do. Matt Schumacher's guy, he didn't really listen. He struggled. He blamed the Twins. The Twins cut him. Like, there's some guys who come in and they're in contract years and they want to get a big deal. And they're sitting there like, I'm not like, no, I know what I'm doing. It's a contract year for me. I want to make sure I look after myself. And I get it. Sometimes you have to. I'm not blaming some players for thinking that, but Sonny Gray didn't have to listen to as much of the Twins coaching staff as he did. And he did. He got a ton of money. And now it sets the precedent of, hey guys, the pitching coordinators and all the guys in the room did this for Sonny Gray. We can do that for you too. Sonny Gray was already a good pitcher. We got a little bit more out of him. He was willing to listen to us on this stuff and do this and that. And, you know, obviously they're professionals. I think a lot of those Twins pitchers were just going to do that anyways, but it's proof. And not only is it proof for those guys in the room right now for the Twins, but it's proof of whatever starting pitcher. I mean, Dallas Keuchel went to the Twins and they had a full rotation, but also he knew that the Twins could help him pitch a little bit. And they milked some halfway decent baseball out of a guy that's probably cooked in Dallas Keuchel. Like, they can do some stuff, and it shows a guy that the Twins bring in to pitch, say, hey, we turned around Pablo Lopez and Sonny Gray, and we've developed Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober and Louis Varland. It's setting that stuff, and Sonny Gray was the most notable thing of that, him and Pablo Lopez, but Sonny Gray's the most famous pitcher that the Twins have done this with. Pablo Lopez is maybe Pablo Lopez is their biggest success story. Sonny Gray's the most notable pitcher to be able to do that with. So everything Sonny Gray has done for this team has been A1. The only thing, and that's not Sonny Gray's fault, I don't think like he intended to do this, was just creating the narrative of quick hook Rocco and this Sonny Gray hates Rocco and that's why he left. And I highly doubt it. The Twins weren't going to pay Sonny Gray that contract, and that's why he didn't come back. It's not even like the Twins are going to pay me what I'm worth. It's just, it's any other job opportunity. You get a job offer from somebody else that's way more money in a place, and you're like, you know what? I enjoyed my time here, but this place is going to pay me way more money. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go set up my family. That's not, there doesn't need to be any drama or controversy in this. This is just kind of how the thing works. Now, the Twins, their payroll was around the 140 mark. They're going to drop that down, or 150 or somewhere there. It's going to drop down to like the 110, 120-ish range with the salary. Now, it's not as bad as other teams, because Cleveland, their payroll is going to take a hit because Bally's about to drop their contract. The Texas Rangers, one of the biggest spenders in baseball, they won a World Series spending for Corey Seager and Simeon, Marcus Semien. I was about to say Trevor Simeon, the former Vikings backup quarterback, but Marcus Semien, that's the guy there. And, signing Jacob deGrom and doing some of these other things. They weren't afraid to spend money, but now things are kind of, I'm not saying that they're going to cut payroll, but they're not going to be big movers in the offseason this year. When you look at the Padres, the most notable small market team willing to spend it all, their TV deal got cut from underneath them. They had to trade Juan Soto. They would have loved to keep Juan Soto. Who wouldn't have loved to keep Juan Soto? But they had to trade him because their TV money was getting cut. By the way, that Xander Bogaerts deal that they signed, looking really bad for the Padres right now, because they could have used that money to sign. Juan Soto, but instead it's going to Xander Bogaerts, who not as a bad baseball player, but certainly you definitely maybe mishandled your assets in that one. And also they re-signed Manny Machado to a deal. Now they still have Tatis, but whatever. Anyway, not necessarily, that's one. And I get the TV stuff all kind of happened fast with the bankruptcy news of Bally. No team obviously knew it was coming even a year ago at this time, I believe, but still, just kind of rough for the Padres. But this isn't a uniquely Twins thing. It's not a cheap poll ads or payroll. And don't get me wrong, I wish they could spend, and there's no reason that they can't. Like, realistically, it's not like they are setting this themselves. They can spend. I also get why they're not. It sucks, and nothing's preventing them from just spending the money anyways and saying that they're in a competitive window and they need to make the investment because fans will come back to the ballpark and whatnot. But it's the state of how things are, and I don't like it. I wish the Twins were spending more money, obviously. I'm not going to sit here and say that they shouldn't be, but it's a business. I get it. Even if I don't agree with it or I don't like it, I get it. I get why. But still go make a move and get this team better. And you can do that without being big spenders. So there are still some moves they can make, because after all, the Twins, even though the Twins aren't going to have a ton of payroll, some of the Twins' best production, especially on the lineup, didn't come from Correa or Buxton or whoever. It came from Royce Lewis and Ed Julian and Matt Wallner and all these other guys. So and Ryan Jeffers and a couple others. The Twins can get some production from those guys. And especially, I mean, the Twins still have Buxton, who's, I mean, that deal's not a ton because of the incentives. It's only like $10 million a year base, which isn't that much money. It's the same amount Polanco gets or Kepler gets. But if you can get Correa and Buxton healthy again, and the plantar fasciitis stuff should be cleared up by next season, and you already saw in the playoffs, Correa knows how to turn it on. So, and the hope was that it was already getting better then. I haven't read too much on an update, so I can't really say. But also, Byron Buxton, the Twins did give a little bit of update on, is that they feel a lot more comfortable with where Buxton was last year, or they feel a lot more about where Buxton is now compared to where he was last year, and the surgeries, and they did a different procedure, and they're hoping that now he's ready to go. And, does that mean he's going to start the season in the center field? I don't know. The Twins and Buxton want Buxton to be in center field. His body just can't hold up right now. And you got to give it time. We got to be patient. But again, if the Twins can get Byron Buxton and Correa, or at the very least one of them, to be playing at their career averages, it's like the Twins signed a guy in the offseason, because the Twins did not get production from Correa or Buxton relative to what the Twins were expecting out of them. And that was kind of the Twins throughout the first half of the year. It kind of felt like, what are we supposed to do? We brought in Buxton and Correa, like Buxton and Correa are here to kind of lead this team, and they're not producing. And that's kind of the hardest part, is the Twins' biggest names and guys that they were counting on to have a lot of their production weren't giving them a lot of production. So if the Twins get that production this year, well, now it's like they did sign a superstar, because they have them in Correa. If Correa can just even play below his career average in Houston, but above what he was performing for the Twins, that's still an improvement. And I like Correa. I love Correa. And I wouldn't turn him down for a moment. But, he's had his two worst careers statistically in Minnesota. Now, granted, some of those teams he was on in Houston, he was protected just so much better in the lineup, which also shouldn't go unnoticed. But also Correa, needed to hit the fastballs a little bit better over the last year than he did in his career. So there's a little give and take there. But this is all to say that the Twins can still compete, and especially in an AL Central. I mean, the Tigers, maybe you'll be a little feisty, but who knows? They always get in their own way early and take themselves out of it. The White Sox are looking to blow that thing up. The Royals, LOL. They're just seriously, the Royals, first of all, for Cleveland, the one scary thing, they got the number 1 overall pick in the draft, but also whatever, they're going to sign a guy for under slot value, and they're going to do this and that. And it's also a very weak draft class. So it's really great that the Twins got the number 5 overall pick in a deep draft class to take Walker Jenkins. And because Walker Jenkins would have been number 1 overall. If Walker Jenkins would have decided, I'm going to play 1 year I think he was committed to the University of North Carolina. If he would have said, hey, I'm going to commit 1 year of baseball for UNC, and then I'm going to go play Major League Baseball, he would have gotten picked immediately by the Gardos. They would have taken him, like, as soon as they got the number 1 overall pick, they're like, we'll take Walker Jenkins, please. There's no Paul Skinnis. There's no, there's no Wyatt Langford. There's none of these guys that can come in. And, there'll be some guys. I'm not saying that they can't find a good player in the draft, but there's no can't miss phenom baseball prospect this year. But with the Royals, by the way, they did not get the number 1 overall pick. Neither did the White Sox. And because of how the draft lottery works, they cannot get a top 10 pick. At least the White Sox can. And they're going to be bad. So the White Sox are in trouble. The Royals do not have a top 100 prospect, and they've been really bad for years. Like 4 years in a row, they've been cellar dwellers in the AL Central, and they have no top 100 prospects? What are they doing? They sold their souls for that World Series in 2015. My goodness. How that team came together is beyond me. Anyway, all of this is to say, the Twins are still going to compete for a postseason berth no matter what. That shouldn't exclude them from trying to make the roster better. I'm not trying to say that they can just sit on their hands, but also win the AL Central, get a home playoff series, and see what happens. And that's what they did last year. And I want them to find another pitcher, the next Sonny Gray, if you will, the next guy who can come in and be a really good number 2 pitcher on the team, potentially even number 1 or a 1A, 1B situation with Lopez, but it's going to cost money. It's going to cost somebody that you probably didn't want them to lose. To the TV side of things, we talk about, I want the Twins to, this is a good opportunity for the Twins to get butts and seats at Target Field this year because of coming off the playoff win, and cutting payroll doesn't help. Try and get fan momentum, because fan momentum was finally turning around in the Twins. Target Field was awesome during those playoff games. Like, everything was turning around. Like, players were like, we want this in the regular season. Like, we love it here. We love Target Field when it's rocking. And the Twins did their part by getting into the playoffs and everything. The point is, the Twins had a lot of momentum going forward. It got halted, and back to the cheap poll lads and back to the ownership doesn't care. And I don't blame fans for coming to that conclusion when the Twins do things like that and kind of feel a little cold and calculated in there. But also, I get why the Twins did it. I also get it. But they had a lot of momentum, and now the Twins are not going to be on Bally Sports North, which means that the Twins could potentially, according to the Twins, this is in an article by Dan Hayes of The Athletic, the Twins felt like they were only broadcasting to a third of their listening audience or their viewing audience around Twins territory. Now, I don't know what necessarily counts as Twins territory, if that's just Minnesota, Western Wisconsin, the Dakotas, Iowa, northern Nebraska. Twins territory is a great term, and it expands because there are Twins territories all the way. Twins territory could extend all the way to eastern Montana. I kid you not. Like, that's how far that this kind of goes. And they, with Bally, were not on a lot of TVs, and they're hoping now they can be. Now, they haven't announced what they're going to do. I think, if based off what I've read and based off what I'd kind of like to see, some combination of the Twins probably, unless they find a streaming partner, the fallback option is going to be on MLB.tv, and you'll need to buy a subscription, and you can watch the Twins games that way on MLB.tv. And we'll get to who's announcing those games in a second. And if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, you can see in the ticker down that we already know who it's going to be. Spoiler alert, it's Corey Provus. But we'll get to that news in a second. But the Twins felt like they weren't on a ton of TVs. The fallback option is being the MLB.tv subscription. Maybe there's a different subscription service that'll take on the Twins. Maybe there's a TV. Maybe Comcast wants to put down roots in the Twin Cities and become the TV home of the Twins and the Wolves and the Wild and whatever. But, with the changing circumstances of regional sports networks, Bally failed. They were the first ones to do it. For Comcast and for some of these other local cable channels, that market's shrinking because of streaming. So, are the Twins just delaying the inevitable if they were to do something like that? I think the Twins ultimately go to MLB.tv streaming for this year and kind of wait everything out and wait for Bally to officially dissolve. And then Major League Baseball kind of tries to figure out some kind of solution. I think that is on the table. I think Apple TV could be on the table because they're already doing a game of the week with Major League Baseball. And maybe that's kind of Apple TV's way of saying, well, if we make sure that everybody, if they do this with MLS, this Apple TV, you can only watch Major League Soccer games if you have an Apple TV Plus subscription. And maybe they do that with the league and they get some money for that and whatever. And maybe that's something. And then you can kind of move it towards more of a national cut of revenue, because that's why the NFL can have a salary cap and everybody has the same amount of money to spend, is because all of the TV deals are national. They're all nationally televised. Whereas in every other sports league, there's so many more games that they have to be regional. And so you're making money based off the region you're in, which is why New York, LA, Boston, Texas get all this money, because they're in ginormous markets. And there's just more people watching their games and paying for the subscription. So I think the Twins go on MLB.tv this year, but I wouldn't be surprised too. Remember back in the old days before, everybody had to have some form of like cable before you could just have your local channels, how the Twins would always have a game on My 29, at least for people my generation. I know it's been on other channels before that, like WCCO and whatnot. I can see the Twins doing like a regional game of the week on some of those minor TV stations, I think it's Fox 9 Plus, but it's My 29 back in my day. Back in my day, there's like Channel 45 could also do it. Heck, it could even go on CCO or KSTP or CARE or Fox 9, wherever. And you have that kind of game of the week. You put it on for the Twins back in the day, it was always the Sunday day games. An easy thing that you could put on. Maybe it's a Saturday game for the Twins that they put on television there. CW Twin Cities could take it, I guess. There's a few different spots where it's like, okay, here's where every single game will be on streaming. And once a week, you can do that. And if you're somebody who doesn't want to pay the subscription, but you have basic cable, well, now you can still watch Twins games. They're just once a week. You can't watch every single one, but at least now you can see one a week. And if you make it more appointment viewing to go, this is the one Twins game a week I can watch, I'm going to sit down and watch it. Maybe that helps out, and in terms of trying to build momentum, it's hard to build momentum for a team that people can't watch. I know people who say, I have young kids, they can't watch Twins games because we don't pay for it. We can't afford it. And they can't watch Twins games every day. And I remember watching Twins games with my dad. And it's what made me like the Twins. And now I can't do that with my kids right now. Like that's something that's real. And you can't build the fan base if you don't watch. I mean, there's colleges that don't, like I'm a Bemidji State guy. Bemidji State took their college hockey games off of the PBS station. They want to incentivize more people to come to games. I get the logic behind it. Also, it didn't really help. And now they don't have anywhere to build momentum on TV. And now it's all streaming. So it's a little bit different, but in college hockey. But again, you need people to watch the games to get excitement. And also didn't help for the goodwill of fans. Dick Bramer is done after 38, 39 seasons of being a Twins broadcaster, longer than most fans have been alive. Dick Bramer has been calling games for him. A legend, grew up in my dad's hometown. He's great. I got to interview Dick Bramer a few years ago on a book tour he was doing, where he was at Pine Grove, historic Pine Grove Park, I might add, in Staples, Minnesota. And he was talking a little bit about the book he was doing. He was going to do a meet and greet, and he wanted to encourage people to come out. And I got the opportunity to talk to him. Great guy. He loves this area. He loves Minnesota and the Dakotas and name dropping towns. And I wouldn't have gotten into broadcasting if it wasn't for Dick Bramer. So his impact on Twins baseball runs deep. And I'm not the only one who wouldn't love the Twins as much as they do if it wasn't for Dick Bramer doing the things he has done. And it felt like the Twins maybe just kind of told him he's done, and there was no real send-off. Now, maybe Bramer wouldn't have wanted the send-off either, because he definitely is that kind of guy. Maybe he didn't want the fanfare. Maybe he knew this was coming. Whatever. Bramer's still going to be around for the Twins in an advisory role. He's still going to be doing a ton of stuff. He's not going anywhere. But also, I get why the Twins felt like it was time to move on. Bally's done. The Twins are going into their new television partner. So they got to figure out a way to, they got to figure out a new way to be on games. So this maybe is the time to have that fresh start and let that new guy be the voice of the Twins for the next 40 years is a long time, but at least just that next guy, and allow the next guy to do his own thing. And immediately when Bramer stepped down, if you follow me on Twitter, I said, this is Corey Provus's job, right? Like, it's totally going to be Provus's job. He's so qualified for that. He does a great job on Twins radio. The radio station I work at is a Twins affiliate. So I got to hear his voice all the time. He's great. Provus is great. He's been doing the job for 12 years now. He's been awesome to get to do all the stuff that he's done. And he's also done some TV. He filled in for Bramer early in the season. And I'm going to be honest, I think when that happened, this probably had been brewing for a while in terms of the Twins. I don't think Provus was gunning for Bramer's job or anything. But I think that once that happened for the Twins' first home series of the year against the Astros, when Bramer got COVID and Provus stepped in, and when he stepped in and did a great job in those games, I thought, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Twins just went, it's probably time that we put Provus in the booth on TV. And I know baseball, TV, and radio might not seem like the biggest step up, because being the radio voice of a baseball team still has a lot of weight to it, maybe compared to some other sports, but it's a great gig. It's a great gig for Provus. He's more than deserving. It stinks that Bramer is not doing it anymore, and I wish that we would have gotten him to officially sign off and do a big message, but you don't always get the storybook endings. His time is done. He's still going to be involved with the Twins. Provus is more than deserving, and he does games for Big Ten Network basketball and football. He's versatile in broadcasting from people who are in the stadium every day. They say he's there. He talks to managers. He's not just showing up for the games. Like, he's a guy who does everything that you want him to do. And, I like Provus, obviously. He does a lot of really, really great stuff. And the other question is what are the Twins going to do on radio? Well, Chris Atterbury, who's the Twins studio host, fill-in, play-by-play announcer, who's perfect for baseball radio. Like Provus can do TV and radio. He's good on both. And Chris Atterbury could do TV. I'm not trying to take that away from him. But Chris Atterbury, the way he likes to broadcast and tell stories and his voice and the way he calls things, baseball, radio, play-by-play announcer is just perfect for the things that he is great at. And Chris Atterbury getting that job after being the St. Paul Saints broadcaster 20 years ago when they were independent baseball to being the Twins studio guy for years and years and years. And I don't know if he applied to be the play-by-play guy after John Gordon stepped down, but not getting that role, staying there, continuing to be a part of Twins baseball, and now will get to be the main radio play-by-play guy. It's great. Honestly, the Twins made their layups in this situation. Bramer leaving stinks. I wish Dick Bramer could do it again. But also, Provus moving into the TV role and Atterbury becoming the main radio guy is just so perfect. Like, it's just such an easy move that everybody can slide into these positions. And Twins baseball games are still going to be great. I believe the Twins said Morneau and Plouffe and Perkins, all the same analysts are going to be there. And for the radio, Dan Gladden is still going to be with Atterbury, and they're going to still do games that way. I thought maybe the Twins would do some kind of simulcast option where games would be on TV and radio, and they'd have Provus do both and Gladden would do both. But, this is just as good. I think this works out. Congratulations to Corey Provus and Chris Atterbury, both very deserving of those positions. I do some play-by-play. I mean, amateur baseball, high school sports in general. But from a baseball perspective, it's not easy. And both those guys do a really, really good job. And I listen to them all the time to try and get better at what I do for my day-to-day job. So it's really, really fun to get to see those guys get promoted and move up the ranks. And hey, Twins, if you need a fill-in play-by-play guy, give me a ring. Give me a ring. I'll work for free. I'll work for free. How about that? So anyway, that pretty much wraps up a ton of stuff on the podcast. I know there's been a lot to talk about. There's one more thing I do want to mention before we break, and I promise we won't be too much longer here. Joe Mauer yesterday, according to some accounts on Twitter who are tracking, I can't tell if they're tracking all of the ballots for Hall of Fame or if they're only tracking the public ballots for the Hall of Fame, because a lot of writers are making them public now. It's kind of the thing to do. Some writers still like to have it anonymous because they don't want to be hounded all the time for their picks. I get both ends. I'd much rather have them be public because at the end of the day, it's like, come on, man, just put your ballot out there. If you get to have a very distinguished position, those ballots should be public, but I get why they're not. According to the balloting, Joe Mauer has hit the 75% threshold needed to become a Hall of Famer on his first ballot. Guys like Torrey Hunter have gotten some votes. I believe there was a couple other former Twins that have gotten on the ballot over the last couple of years, including Michael Kadire, who fell off. Johan Santana, Joe Nathan, believe have fallen off. I believe Joe Nathan is a Hall of Famer. Torrey Hunter, I would love to see put in the Hall of Fame. He might be in the Hall of Really Good. I'm a homer, so I'd love to see Torrey Hunter get in the Hall of Fame. Joe Mauer, I know is going to get into the Hall of Fame. I thought that before. I thought maybe you'd take him 3-4 years. It kind of need to go through, be a lot of people going, well, he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer because of the second half of his career and moving to first base. And I get all of that. But Joe Mauer has cleared the threshold according to the votes counted so far. If the voting stopped right now, if we stop the count, Joe Mauer is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I know that the second half of Mauer's career was weird, and maybe some people still have that taste in their mouth, but I'm begging you to remember peak Joe Mauer. I was like 5 years old starting to watch Twins baseball, or just being informed of who the Twins were and what baseball was. But by the time I was, 8, 9 years old and really starting to like baseball and the Minnesota Twins specifically was when Joe Mauer was at the peak of his powers. And I'm not as big of a baseball fan and as big of a Twins fan I am today, if not for Joe Mauer and if not for some of the things that he did. And the fact that he won 3 batting titles and an MVP as a catcher, I think is alone to do it. It's why, again, if Bartolo Colon doesn't steal the 2005 Cy Young away from Johan Santana, he gets back-to-back Cy Youngs in 04, 05, and 06, and he has to be in the Hall of Fame off of that alone. But he doesn't. So thanks. I know everybody likes to remember the big sexy in his Twins tenure. Thanks, Bartolo. By the way, He was using. He was roiding. But we don't talk about that, I guess. Anyway, I'm sticking up for my guy Johan. I do like Bartolo Colon as a meme, but I'm sticking up for my guy Johan. Also, the other thing that's important to remember in this is Joe Mauer. Yeah, nice guy. It helps when you have a clean image off the field. Hall of Fame is voted on by the Baseball Writers Association of America, and they get to kind of make that call. But it helps when you're a little nice to the writers. Whether you love or hate Curt Schilling, his Hall of Fame candidacy definitely got impacted by him just saying some things. And I'm not going to get into like the political stuff of Curt Schilling, but alone, like the revealing Tim Wakefield has cancer before his something that obviously everybody wanted to keep private, and Tim Wakefield and Curt Schilling going out there and just throwing it into the wind. Not a great move. But there's other things that have kind of burned his ill will with the writers that have not helped things out. But anyway, that's not to get into a different diatribe on that. The whole thing with Joe Mauer is he's a good guy, had a great career. The second half wasn't where it was going to be, but also if Joe Mauer would have retired in 2013 after the bilateral leg weakness, and if he never switched to being a first baseman and just retired, would he have gotten the Kirby Puckett treatment of, Kirby Puckett didn't have a ton of hits when it was all said and done, or at least not to where a first ballot Hall of Famer should have been. But everybody was like, well, god dang it, he would have gotten there if he would have been able to keep playing. So we're going to put him in. And I think Joe Mauer doesn't get all of that credibility, but he gets some of that with, my goodness, this guy was such a good player in his peak. And he ended up still finishing with over 2,100 hits and still had some moments and was still a good baseball player and should have won a Gold Glove in 2017, but didn't because, I don't know, Mitch Moreland deserved it or something dumb. Mauer being a first ballot Hall of Famer would genuinely surprise me, and in a good way. But it'd be really cool. And if things hold up, first ballot Hall of Famer Joe Mauer would just be so, so cool. So I really hope that happens. I really hope that that's something that does come to life. But I definitely thought he gets some votes, and kind of like by the third or fourth time around. Now, if he doesn't get in this season, he's definitely getting in next season, because I'm sure there's some guys that didn't vote for him based off first ballot Hall of Famer is a different level of Hall of Famer, which, you can love or hate. But next year, Joe Mauer we're at the very latest in the summer of 2025, at the very latest, having the Joe Mauer Hall of Fame induction speech in Cooperstown, New York. And at the earliest, it's happening in 2024. It'd be funny if it happened in 2024, because it'd be him and Jim Leland, manager of the Tigers for a long time. Funny to have those two go side to side. Anyway, but that's it. Joe Mauer should be a first ballot Hall of Famer now at this point. I'm ready to jump on the bandwagon with it if everything holds up. Now, obviously, maybe the private votes are the ones that are against Mauer. Maybe, that's just the early recount. It's like when you're watching an election, sometimes you can't get too out of your skis yet, but it's a very good indicator for Joe Mauer that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame sooner rather than later. And that's awesome, because the guy deserves it. All right. Well, this has been Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast. I'm talking for an hour, and I need some water. So here we go. I'm going to try and be a little bit more consistent in the posting now that we kind of are into the off season and things are starting to happen. It's great. We got a lot of stuff happening. I'm really, really, really appreciative of everybody listening and everybody on the podcast. We got more stuff coming. So keep listening, keep watching Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Also go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, the place to listen to Bombs Away, a Minnesota Twins podcast. We'll see you next time.